Have you ever wondered if what we call life is nothing more than a dream? One in which we don't realize we're dreaming? If so, then you're already halfway to what Anthony de Mello calls true awakening. The book Awareness is not just an invitation. It's a gentle yet stirring cry to those who feel that something deep within them longs for more than success, love, safety, or the approval of others. Anthony de Mello, a Jesuit priest, psychotherapist, and Indian author, is one of the most luminous and simultaneously provocative figures of modern spirituality. Born in Bombay and trained in both Western Christian traditions and Eastern mysticism, de Mello blended the depths of Christianity with Buddhist introspection and the clarity of contemporary psychology. But above all, Anthony de Mello was a man who, through simple yet unsettling words, sought to pull people out of the slumber of their automatic lives. The book Awareness was born out of a series of conferences and retreats led by de Mello for audiences around the world. It is not a systematic treatise nor a didactic work, but rather a mosaic of reflections, parables, provocative questions, and spiritual insights. With his direct style, at times abrupt, at others tender, the author challenges us to question everything we believe about ourselves, about others, about happiness, religion, and love. The impact of this book was both immense and controversial. Many readers felt that for the first time, someone was clearly articulating their deepest inner restlessness and offering them a genuine roadmap to inner freedom. At the same time, religious authorities viewed his work with suspicion, believing it challenged traditional dogma. And indeed, de Mello was unafraid to assert that true religion is not about conformity, but about consciousness, and that without personal awakening, not even the noblest faith can save a person from self-inflicted suffering. At the heart of this book beats a simple yet unsettling idea. Happiness, love, and peace are not found outside ourselves. They are our true nature, but we are too asleep to recognize them. A life lived on autopilot, in pursuit of success, validation, possessions, or conditional love, is not real life. It is merely a string of restless dreams. Awakening, de Mello says, does not require a superhuman effort, but simply a clear and honest look at reality. Spirituality means waking up. Most people are asleep, but they don't know they're asleep. Why does Awareness remain such a relevant book even after so many years? Because our modern world, with all its technology, abundance, and information, continues to encourage the same slumbering dream. The dream of dependence on success, image, belonging, and possessions. De Mello arrives like a gentle tap on the shoulder, or at times, a beneficial earthquake, reminding us that true freedom begins the moment we stop seeking anything outside ourselves to be happy. This book won't offer you quick fixes, sweet promises, or magical methods. But if you have the courage to listen with an open heart, Awareness can radically transform the way you see the world, others, and, above all, yourself. What does it truly mean to wake up? What if you were to discover that, until this very moment, you have never truly been awake, not even for a single day of your life? That everything you've believed about yourself, about others, about love, success, and happiness has been, in fact, a beautiful dream or a subtle nightmare. Anthony de Mello opens this book not with a definition, but with a gentle shock. Spirituality means waking up. Most people are asleep, but they don't know they're asleep. This statement is not a poetic metaphor, but a precise observation about the way we live. We are born asleep. We love asleep. We work asleep. We raise children asleep. We die asleep. We live in relationships where we project, pretend, manipulate, and consciously deceive ourselves, all the while believing we are happy. The truth, de Mello says, is that we live on autopilot, confused by fear, desire, and conditioning. And paradoxically, we defend this sleep with enormous energy. Spirituality, as presented here, is not religion, not moralism, not piety. It is lucidity, the clear seeing of what is. It has nothing to do with becoming better, but everything to do with becoming aware. All mystics, whether Christian or non-Christian, say the same thing. Everything is good. Though it may appear that the world is in chaos, in essence, everything is good. The only reason we don't see this is because we are asleep. We live in a nightmare and call it life. This awakening is not pleasant. It is not comfortable. In fact, at first, it's not even desirable, because it requires us to let go of everything that gave us an identity, our roles, our stories, our victimhood, our certainties. It is a kind of death of the false self. That's precisely why, the author says with bitter humor, people don't really want to be healed. They only want relief. Even the best psychologist will tell you that most people don't want to be healed. They only want a bit of relief. Deep healing is painful. De Mello shares a parable that captures this truth in a nearly theatrical form. A man knocks on his son's door. "Jaime, wake up." "I don't want to wake up, Dad." "You have to go to school." "I don't want to. The kids laugh at me, the teachers are boring, and I hate school." "Let me give you 3 reasons why you must go. It's your duty, you're 45 years old, and you're the school principal." We are all Jaime, the author says. We refuse to wake up because it feels too comfortable in the sleep of our constructed identity. When life takes away our toys, relationships, success, image, we don't truly want to grow. We just want someone to fix them for us. People don't want to leave the kindergarten of life. They just want their broken toys fixed. Give me back my wife, give me back my job, my money, my health. They don't want to wake up, they want the sleep to be more pleasant. This is where the radical power of De Mello's message lies. You cannot wake up until you are willing to see just how deeply you don't want to wake up. This inner contradiction between the voice of the soul crying, "Set me free," and the voice of the ego pleading for more comfort, is where the spiritual journey truly begins. Awakening is not a process of learning something new, but of letting go of what you are not, of the lies you've told yourself about happiness, love, duty, or morality. It is not an accumulation, but a revelation, not a conquest, but a surrender. A wise man doesn't try to wake people up, because he knows that awakening is irritating. If you're comfortably wrapped in the warmth of your illusions, waking up will only upset you. So I just dance my dance. If you wake up, wonderful. If not, what a pity. This awakening is also deeply liberating. You are no longer a slave to your emotions, to the opinions of others, to the past, or to an imagined future. You no longer live like an actor lost in his own role. You begin to see, clearly, directly, without demanding that life be any different than it is. In this first step, acknowledging that you are asleep and that you don't truly want to wake up, a crack opens in the shell of illusion. It is a fracture through which, if you are brave enough, the light can begin to enter. The illusion of happiness and the conditioning of love. What if I told you that you don't actually want to be happy? That true happiness, authentic, free, and unconditional, frightens you more than a life full of conflict and dependency? That you prefer your attachments, even the toxic ones, over a peace that comes with no guarantees? This is the shocking starting point of Anthony de Mello's reflections in this chapter. And as painful as it may be to hear, it becomes undeniably true once you allow it to sink in. We don't want to be happy. We want other things. Or more precisely, we want to be happy, but only under certain conditions. Does that sound cynical? Not at all. It sounds liberating, because once you understand this subtle mechanism, you can begin to step out of the cycle of self-imposed suffering. We don't want happiness. We want our attachments. Unconditional happiness is simple, but we don't want simplicity. We want things. We want people. We want guarantees. We tell ourselves we desire love, security, truth, but in reality, what we truly want is constant affirmation of our self-image. Our attachments become the lenses through which we interpret everything, and when those attachments are threatened, we suffer. You are my happiness. If I can't have you, I refuse to be happy. This is the secret destructive formula behind all conditional love. And this is precisely what society, family, and religion teach us, that it's noble to sacrifice yourself, that it's beautiful to lose yourself in another, that it's virtuous to suffer for love. De Mello mercilessly dismantles this romantic mythology of pain and dependence. He offers a simple yet deeply unsettling exercise, one that has shaken thousands in his conferences. Think of someone you love deeply and say to them in your mind, "I would rather be happy than have you." How does that feel? Selfish? Guilty? Ashamed? This question reveals the depth of our conditioning. We've been taught to believe that choosing our own happiness is a betrayal, that loving someone means neglecting yourself. But then, who is doing the loving? A living human being or a slave to the fear of loss, the false conditions of love? If I have you, I'm happy. Anthony de Mello casts a cold but clarifying light on the most revered of human emotions, love. In truth, he says, what we often call love is actually possessiveness, fear of loneliness, a desire for approval, or a need to control. We don't truly love the person in front of us. We love the image we've projected onto them and the way they make us feel. Want proof? If the other person stops doing what you want, how do you feel? If they ignore you, reject you, betray you, do you still love them? Or do you hate them with the same passion you once called love? In this lucid exposure, love is not the sweet emotion glorified by poets, but an empty space in which you can be fully present for another person, without conditions, without judgment, without demanding anything in return. How many people truly know this kind of love? True love never says, "Be mine and I will be happy." It says, "I am happy, and if you are too, even better." This kind of love seems impossible to an ego trained in control, and that is precisely why it is not a product of willpower. It is the fruit of awakening. And that is precisely why it is not a product of willpower. It is the fruit of awakening. You cannot learn free love, but you can discover it the moment you let go of all its false versions. Deconstructing toxic models of love. De Mello asks us to look honestly in the mirror and ask ourselves, whom have I truly loved? Not out of a need to be desired, not out of guilt, not out of fear of abandonment, but simply for who they were. Rarely do we find a pure answer. He does not judge us. He doesn't ask us to become better. He invites us to see, plainly and without defense, to see that we love out of fear, that we sacrifice out of pride, that we help out of a need for validation, and that behind these seemingly noble behaviors hides a frightened child who simply wants to be loved. True love asks for nothing. It is not emotional commerce. It's not a transaction, and it's not, "Look what I do for you." It is a gift that doesn't even know it's a gift. The real challenge is not to blame ourselves for our imperfect love. It is to wake up from it, to see it for what it is, to become witnesses to our own tender manipulation. And in that lucidity, true love begins to emerge, not as a conquest, but as the absence of illusion. Noble selfishness, between morality and manipulation. How sincere is the good we do? Is our love truly altruistic? Or is it merely a subtle form of personal gratification? Anthony de Mello delves here into one of the most uncomfortable, yet essential, themes of awareness. Refined selfishness, that form of self-deception hidden beneath the appearance of goodness, sacrifice, and charity. On the surface, we believe we are generous, altruistic, full of compassion. But if we were to truly examine the motivations behind our actions, we might discover that more often than not, we don't do good for the other person's sake, but to feel good about ourselves, or, more subtly still, to avoid guilt. There are two kinds of selfishness, one coarse, which seeks personal pleasure directly, and another refined, which finds pleasure in helping others. It's an uncomfortable revelation. Even when we give, save, support, or love, we are often still seeking ourselves. What we call altruism is, quite often, a sophisticated way of feeding our own ego. Refined selfishness, disguised as sacrifice. Society teaches us to value self-sacrifice, to lose ourselves in others, to give up our own desires, to suffer for the greater good. But de Mello shines a harsh light on this model. Sacrifice is not always altruistic. Sometimes it is merely a subtle transaction. I sacrifice my happiness for you, and in return I expect you to love me, appreciate me, and see me as good. This is not love. It is manipulation. It is emotional commerce. And when we don't receive the reward we were secretly hoping for, we feel frustration, resentment, and guilt, all clear signs that our sacrifice was not unconditional. De Mello recounts how, in a conversation with a woman who took pride in her sacrifices, he simply asked, "Would you rather be loved for who you are or for what you do? Would you rather be free or be indispensable?" This question cuts deeply into the illusion of goodness, because many of us would rather be indispensable, to be needed, to be sought after, to be essential in someone else's life. Not out of love, but because our identity feeds on the feeling of being necessary. The farce of charity and altruistic, egoistic love. De Mello then turns to one of the most sacred concepts in society, charity. But what he finds behind charitable acts is not always pure. Often it is the ego seeking to feel valuable, to wash away guilt, to earn recognition, or simply to escape the discomfort of witnessing others suffer. True charity is when you don't even know you're doing good, when your right hand doesn't know what your left hand is doing. This kind of charity doesn't seek justification, doesn't ask for applause, and doesn't build heroic self-portraits. It flows naturally from an awakened heart, one that sees suffering as a natural part of life and responds without drama, without martyrdom, without expectations. In an almost humorous way, de Mello illustrates subtle selfishness. If you save a child from drowning, ask yourself honestly, are you doing it because you can't bear the thought that you could have saved them and didn't? Or simply because it's a natural gesture without any personal stake? This subtle inquiry into motivation reveals a disturbing truth. Even the most noble actions can be tainted by ego, not because we are bad, but because we are asleep. We seek goodness not for its own sake, but for the sake of the image we hold of ourselves. The hidden motivations behind doing good. Perhaps the most painful truth revealed by Anthony de Mello is this: almost everything we do for ourselves, even when we believe we're doing it for others. Every act of love is ultimately an act of self-protection or self-fulfillment. A mother sacrifices her dreams for her children, but perhaps she does so out of a desire to feel like a good mother. A friend stands by you in difficult times, but perhaps it's because they can't bear the thought of being abandoned themselves. A person helps a stranger, but maybe it's because they fear their own indifference. There is nothing wrong with this. De Mello doesn't judge us, he simply invites us to see, to accept that before we can love purely, we must recognize our own hidden needs. Only then, in the light of clarity, can true love, free, unconditioned, and pure, begin to take root. In his words, when you do good and don't know that you're doing good, when you love and it doesn't even occur to you that you're loving, then you've begun to truly live. In conclusion, de Mello places us face to face with a difficult yet liberating truth. Until we recognize the refined selfishness hidden within our so-called altruistic actions, we cannot truly love. And this recognition does not call for shame or guilt, but for a gentle awakening, an acceptance of human nature, and an invitation to authenticity. On letting go and attachment, have you ever believed that in order to be free, you must let go? That you need to cut ties, cast things out, detach yourself from everything that binds you? Perhaps you've dreamed of a stoic peace in which you feel nothing, attached to no one, and suffer no loss. But what if I told you that this kind of letting go doesn't set you free? It binds you even more subtly. Anthony de Mello directly challenges the spiritual myth of renunciation as a path to enlightenment. Not because he advocates attachment, but because he sees in renunciation just another form of attachment, one disguised as virtue. Every time you renounce something, you remain tied to it, because in truth, you haven't let go. you're clinging in reverse. The truth, he says, is that as long as you fight an attachment, you give it power. When you reject, deny, or condemn a desire, you turn it into an enemy that stalks you from the shadows. You may refuse a pleasure but carry it with you as guilt, temptation, or memory. You are not free. You are simply at war with yourself. Why letting go is not the solution. In a statement that sounds almost sacrilegious yet carries extraordinary depth, de Mello says, "A priest always talks about sex, a prostitute always talks about God." This unsettling phrase reveals a subtle psychological mechanism. What you repress obsesses you. Those who have seemingly renounced pleasure, desire, and the world often remain its prisoners internally. They think more about what they have denied than those who live those experiences naturally. Renunciation, then, becomes a mask for an even deeper fixation. Any struggle against an attachment only makes it stronger. You feed it with your resistance. Authentic spirituality, in de Mello's view, is not about repression, but about understanding. It does not require you to cut off your desires, but to see clearly their nature. And once you realize that you do not need them to be free, they lose their power over you. You no longer reject them. You simply allow them to fall away. You don't need to renounce, just see things as they are, and then they will drop from your hands on their own. How we become addicted to what we deny. Anthony de Mello describes with both humor and precision how we can enslave ourselves through our battle against desire. Imagine you forbid yourself from eating chocolate. Starting tomorrow, not a single piece. No compromises, no just one. What happens? The thought of chocolate becomes an obsession. It haunts you. You see it everywhere. You smell it, feel its texture, taste it in your mind. Without realizing it, you've become even more attached to what you've forbidden. This is the law of inverted attachment. The harder you try to deny something, the more power you give it. Attachment is not in the object. Attachment is in the idea that I cannot be happy without that object. That's the key. You don't need to throw things out of your life. You need to change your relationship with them. You can have things, relationships, goals, but know that no real happiness depends on them. Once you truly understand that, attachment disappears. How to truly overcome attachments. Understanding, not denial. If denial is not the solution, then what is? How do we reach inner freedom without falling into the trap of repression? De Mello offers a path that is simple yet profound. Look at things clearly, understand them, and they will fall away on their own. This is not a theoretical solution. It's an invitation to a daily practice of awareness. Look at the object of your attachment, a person, an image, a desire. Observe how you invest it with power. Without this, I can't live. Ask yourself, is this true? Or is it a story I've learned to believe? Don't judge the attachment. Don't fight it. Understand it. Authentic understanding brings effortless detachment. The attachment becomes useless, irrelevant. It doesn't disappear through struggle. It dissolves in light. Spirituality is not about doing without. It's about realizing you don't need. True liberation doesn't come from renunciation, but from clarity, from a clear eye that sees no external object has the power to make you happy. And once you see this, you're no longer a slave to that object. You're free to have it or not, to love without possessing, to live in the world without being of the world. In conclusion, forced renunciation is just another chain. Attachment, whether in the form of desire or rejection, is still a form of dependence. But awareness, clear, calm, and unforced, breaks the chains effortlessly. De Mello doesn't call us to live without desires, but to live without the illusion that desires can save us. When you see what is real, desire drops away on its own. No drama, no struggle, no suffering, just silence. The art of listening and unlearning. Do we truly listen? Or are we merely waiting for our turn to speak? Do we open ourselves to understand or just to validate what we already believe? This is the key question in a vital chapter, where Anthony de Mello casts a harsh light on how we perceive truth. At first glance, listening seems like a passive act. You keep your mouth shut and your ears open. But in reality, true listening is an act of great spiritual courage, because it requires you to let go, if only for a moment, of everything you think you know. Authentic listening doesn't mean agreeing. It doesn't mean being impressed. It means being open. De Mello makes it clear, truth cannot be transmitted through words. Words can only point, provoke, or shake you. But at its core, truth is experiential, not logical. It's an inner aha, a leap in consciousness, not an accumulation of knowledge. Truth cannot be formulated. It can only be seen. This idea is devastating to the ordinary mind, which is always seeking structures, certainties, doctrines. We've been taught to believe that to know means to memorize or to argue. But De Mello tells us, true knowing arises only when you are willing not to know. Authentic listening, without judgment. What does it truly mean to listen? It means being so present that what you hear doesn't immediately pass through the filters of good or bad, right or wrong. I already know this, or I disagree. Listen not to approve or reject. Listen to understand. This is one of the most difficult tasks of awakening, to suspend automatic judgment and simply be a witness. When you listen without evaluating, without interpreting, without mentally responding in real time, something new can enter you. This is true openness. It's not about agreeing. It's about being willing to be transformed. I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm only asking you to be willing to hear something other than what you've been taught. Truth is not in words, but in experience. De Mello affirms that any system of ideas, no matter how beautiful, is merely a map. It is not the territory. A map can guide you, but you cannot live in it. Words, even the holiest ones, are not reality. Reality must be lived, not described. No theory can encompass reality. I'm not here to talk to you about truth. I'm here to talk to you about the obstacles that prevent you from seeing it. This is one of the most important distinctions in the entire book. De Mello doesn't offer us the truth. He simply tries to help us see what blocks us from perceiving it directly. And the greatest obstacle is what we think we know. That's why awakening doesn't come through learning, but through unlearning. Not through the accumulation of ideas, but through the emptying of the mind from rigid, outdated beliefs. This is the true practice of any authentic awakening, not to learn more, but to unlearn what keeps you trapped. In spirituality, to learn is to unlearn, to set aside, to strip away the layers of falsehood upon which you've built who you think you are. What it means to be open, not gullible. One of the most common obstacles to awakening is the confusion between openness and naivety. De Mello is clear. Being open does not mean accepting everything you're told. It doesn't mean swallowing new ideas without discernment. On the contrary, being open means being curious, but vigilant, willing to explore, but not to cling. To be open does not mean to be gullible. It means to be willing to see, with the heart, the mind, the whole being. He quotes with admiration a saying of the Buddha, "Do not accept what I say just because I am your teacher. Test what you hear, like a goldsmith tests gold, by cutting, burning, rubbing, and melting." This is the right attitude, not obedience, but inquiry, not submission, but the courage to think for yourself. In this way, authentic listening becomes an act of liberation, not conformity, and unlearning becomes a sacred process, a cleansing of the inner mirror so that reality can reflect in it, clearly and freely. In conclusion, this chapter is a call to inner silence, to a kind of listening that does not seek answers, but clarity, to a learning that does not add, but empties, to an attitude that doesn't accumulate, but removes, until all that remains is you, the real you, the living one, the awakened one. Listen not to confirm, listen to see, listen to be changed. The illusions about others and the world, Do you truly know the person next to you, or are you merely responding to your image of them? When you say, I love you, do you love the living being in front of you, or the projection you've created of them? This is the unsettling question Anthony de Mello places at the heart of this chapter, a question that shakes the very foundations of what we believe about relationships, love, and how we interact with the world. In a nearly shocking assertion, he says, we never really know people. We only know our ideas about them. No one interacts with reality. They interact with their own labels. This simple yet profound statement shows us that we don't live in the world. We live in a filtered version of it, a version fabricated by the mind, shaped by our past, our desires, our fears, and our conditioning. We live in a psychological reality, not an authentic one. Labels, projections, and expectations. Every second, we apply labels. We say of others, he's lazy, she's kind, he's toxic, she's my soulmate. We say of ourselves, I'm weak, I'm a good mother, I'm a failure. We say of the world, it's dangerous, it's unfair, it's beautiful. Labels may seem harmless, but in truth, they are unconscious attempts to freeze living reality into a controllable image. When you name something, you stop seeing it. You put a label on it and think you know what it is. In reality, you know nothing. Labeling is a defense mechanism. It protects us from uncertainty, from complexity, from truth. We label people as friends, enemies, manipulators, victims. And then we interact with the label, not the living being in front of us. We relate to a mental mask, not to a living presence. Projections are even subtler. We see in others what we desire or what we fear. We idealize or demonize them based on our own shadows. We fall in love with an illusion and then suffer when reality no longer matches our internal movie. You create a dream about someone and fall in love with it, not with the person, with the dream. This projection is not just romantic. It appears in every kind of relationship, between parents and children, between friends, between teachers and students, between therapists and clients. Instead of seeing what is, we see what we want it to be. And then we suffer, get angry, feel betrayed. But the problem is not reality. The problem is the movie in our heads. How we build relationships with images, not real people. Anthony de Mello goes even further. The affection, attachment, and love we experience are rarely directed at real people. They are built around an inner image that we nourish, project, and defend. We live with a mental photograph of the other, not with the living being in front of us. You rarely love what is. You usually love what you imagined it to be. This is one of the most painful revelations of awakening, but also one of the most liberating. Because the moment you realize you've confused an image for reality, you begin to see. You begin to see the person in front of you not as the spouse who betrayed me, or the child who disappointed me, but as a living, unique being in motion in their own process. Only then does true love begin, love without a label. True love is when you see a person as they are, not as you want them to be. That means no longer labeling their pain, their mistakes, their traits, letting go of they should have and if only they were, meeting them, not fixing them, being present, not correcting, seeing, not controlling. Awareness as the antidote. But how do we break free from this hypnosis of labels and projections? How can we see reality as it truly is? De Mello's answer is clear: through awareness, through observation without judgment, through silent attention. Don't try to change anything, just look. Look with a clear gaze, without desire, without fear. This gaze is a spiritual act. It doesn't require effort, but presence. It's not about analysis, but observation. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin to see, here's a label, here's a projection. Here I am expecting this person to behave like the character in my movie. And gradually, in that awareness, the illusions begin to dissolve. You no longer need to control. You no longer want to change. You begin to see the world and the people in it as they truly are: imperfect, chaotic, beautiful, real. Awareness is the key, not change, not control, just seeing. In conclusion, this chapter teaches us a lesson of revolutionary simplicity. We cannot love, we cannot understand, we cannot truly live as long as we live in projections instead of reality. Awakening begins the moment we peel the image off the face of the other, when we drop the label and for the first time meet the person. Let the person be who they are, and maybe for the first time you will truly see them. Negative feelings and how they deceive us. Where do our negative emotions come from? Are they a natural response to reality, or the result of an illusion about what reality should have been? Anthony de Mello opens this chapter with a radical idea. Negative emotions are not caused by events themselves, but by our thoughts and conditioning about those events. And until we understand this, we will continue to be victims of our own projections. No one can make you suffer. You are the one causing your pain, because you misinterpret what's happening. From an early age, we are taught that it's perfectly normal and justified to suffer because of others. He upset me. She offended me. They betrayed me. He hurt me. These are phrases we use automatically. But de Mello dismantles them one by one, showing that no one in reality can enter us and press the pain button, unless that button is already installed. What are negative emotions? At their core, negative emotions are a response to a false belief. We believe we should have been treated differently, that it's not fair, that we don't deserve this, that we can't live without X. When life doesn't align with these thoughts, we react with anger, frustration, fear, shame, or jealousy. Not because reality is wrong, but because our projection onto it is. Your anger doesn't come from what the other person did. It comes from your attachment to the idea that it shouldn't have happened. Thus, negative emotions are not innate. They're not natural, as we tend to think. They are learned, fed, and sustained by an unconscious mechanism of judgment and comparison. How we keep them alive through false thinking. Anthony de Mello emphasizes a subtle yet devastating mechanism. We don't suffer from negative emotions because we feel them once, but because we keep replaying them with repetitive thoughts. Suffering doesn't come from the initial pain. It comes from the thought you keep repeating about that pain. Were you rejected? That hurts, yes. But what happens next? Instead of feeling the pain and letting it pass, you start ruminating. Why did they do that? What did I do wrong? I'm not good enough. Everyone leaves me. In this way, the original pain becomes a permanent wound, kept alive by false thoughts. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. De Mello compares this to a wound you keep scratching. The wound itself isn't the problem. It's the fact that you won't let it heal. Thought is the finger that keeps reopening it. And these thoughts come invariably from false beliefs. That you must be accepted by everyone, that you must be admired, that something is wrong with you if someone doesn't love you, that you are lost without security. Your negative emotions are signs that you are attached to an illusion. And more painfully, you cling to that illusion because it gives you an identity. When you suffer, you feel like somebody. You are the victim, the betrayed, the wounded. This is an identity we're afraid to lose. So we keep our pain, unaware that, in doing so, we're locking ourselves in an imaginary prison. The freedom to feel without being imprisoned. What does Anthony de Mello propose instead of repressing or endlessly analyzing our negative emotions? Pure awareness, observation, clear presence. Don't try to get rid of the negative emotion. Don't condemn it. Don't justify it. Just watch it. Let it be, and it will dissolve. This proposal sounds simple, but it's revolutionary. It completely transforms our relationship with our inner experiences. It offers us radical freedom, the freedom to feel anything, anger, sadness, fear, without becoming a slave to it. The essential difference? Feeling is not the same as identifying. You can feel anger without being angry. You can feel sadness without calling yourself unhappy. You can move through an emotional wave without mistaking it for who you are. You are not your emotion, you are the space that observes it. This is true freedom, not freedom from feeling, but freedom from being controlled by what you feel. Not hiding from emotions, but letting them come and go like clouds in the sky of awareness. When you allow yourself to feel without believing the story behind it, the emotion passes. What remains is just you, quiet and alive. In conclusion, negative emotions are not a sentence. They are an invitation. Every burst of anger hides a false belief. Every fear conceals an attachment. Every resentment is a call for clarity. We don't need sophisticated methods to be free. We need unfiltered awareness, honest observation, lucid silence. Observe your emotion. Let it be. Don't do anything with it, and you'll see it dissolve on its own, like mist before the sun. Dependency, the root of suffering. Have you ever asked yourself what truly keeps you trapped in suffering? It's not other people, not life events, not the past, not luck or fate. It is dependency, that invisible yet incredibly strong bond by which we tie our happiness to something outside ourselves, a person, approval, a result, an image. Anthony de Mello doesn't sugarcoat it. Behind every chronic suffering lies a psychological dependency, a need turned into obsession, a desire turned into a condition, a search turned into a prison. Dependency begins when you believe that without that thing, you cannot be happy. The need for validation, control, and security. According to de Mello, the three major sources of dependency are validation, control, and security. Three fantasies of the ego that, while seemingly normal, turn us into emotional prisoners. Validation, the need to be approved, admired, and confirmed by others. We live in fear of being rejected, criticized, ignored. And when rejection comes, we suffer, not because we lack value, but because we've linked our value to others' opinions. If you don't appreciate me, I feel empty. Why? Because I've put you in the place of my soul. Control. The need to know, to anticipate, to manipulate everything around us. We want people to behave a certain way, life to unfold according to plan, things to happen as expected. And when they don't, we don't accept. We suffer. We get angry. We panic. Why? Because we've confused control with security. Security, the need for stability, for guaranteed outcomes, for the avoidance of loss. This fear of the unknown makes us cling to relationships, status, money, religion, identity. But life, by its very nature, is unstable. And the more we try to force it to be secure, the more vulnerable we become. Dependency on security makes you a slave to fear. These forms of dependency keep us trapped in the illusion that happiness is out there, in a thing, in a person, in an outcome. But happiness is not found in the object of desire. It is what remains when the desire dissolves. Waking up from dependency, the beginning of freedom. True awakening begins the moment you no longer need, when you can say, I want this, but I don't need it. There's a huge difference between desire and necessity. Desire is natural, fluid, human. But when desire becomes necessity, I can't live without this. We've entered the realm of dependency, and with it, suffering. When you need, you no longer love. When you're free, you can love. De Mello states that there is no real love where there is need. You can want someone, enjoy their presence, but the moment you become dependent, love turns into possessiveness, fear, and control. And perhaps one of his most radical claims is this: if you can't live without someone, then you don't love them. You're dependent on them. This idea shatters romantic myths and even some spiritual traditions that glorify sacrificial love. De Mello dismantles this false model and offers another. Love as freedom. Love as the absence of fear. Love as pure presence. How to love without attachment. But how is it possible to love without attachment? Isn't that a contradiction? How can you be with someone, give yourself fully, yet not cling? De Mello's answer is not theoretical, it's experiential. You truly love when you can say, I love you, but I don't need you to be happy. This kind of love is not cold or distant. On the contrary, it is the deepest form of giving because it asks for nothing. It doesn't seek affirmation. It doesn't demand a response. It doesn't depend on reciprocity. It flows from a soul that is already whole, not from a need to be completed. To love means to enjoy someone's presence without trying to possess them. This is a quiet revolution, to allow yourself to love without fear, to desire something without turning it into a condition for happiness, to live alongside someone knowing you could live without them. This is not indifference, it is freedom. And only in freedom can love truly flourish. In conclusion, Anthony de Mello offers us a mirror that is harsh, but liberating. Our suffering comes from dependency, and every moment of lucidity, every time we can say, I don't need this, but I choose it, is a step toward true awakening. When you are free from dependency, you begin to truly love. And even if you lose something, you don't lose yourself. Fear, the source of violence. Why do we react with hatred, control, anger, fanaticism, or possessiveness? What lies beneath all of it? Anthony de Mello is clear. Behind our violent actions, behind moral rigidity, behind personal and collective wars, there is one single driving force: fear. Love is not the dominant force in the world. Fear is. It fuels religions, politics, relationships. It lies at the root of all aggression. Fear is subtle, cunning, well disguised. It doesn't always show up as terror or visible panic. More often it hides in automatic reactions, in moralism, in the need to control, in the desire to be right, in the rejection of others. It is present even where we believe we're fighting for truth, for love, or for safety. Fear hidden in reactions, religions, and ideals. De Mello makes an uncomfortable claim. Many religions are not founded on love, but on fear. Fear of hell, fear of punishment, fear of mistakes, fear of not being good enough. Religious practice often becomes a self-protection mechanism. We follow commandments not out of love, but out of fear of consequences. We don't love God. We fear Him. A God you love out of fear is not God. He is a projection of your parents, your society, your guilt. The same fear underlies rigid ideals. The desire to be perfect, to be pure, to be right. When people become fanatical, it's not because of spiritual strength, but inner fragility. They can't tolerate chaos, uncertainty, or difference, so they create rigid ideals and moral laws to feel safe. But real life is fluid. People are not perfect. The soul does not live in rules. And when fear meets reality, what arises is violence. What lies behind aggression and war? All aggression is armed fear. De Mello affirms that no form of violence, verbal, psychological, or physical, comes from strength. The violent person is always weak, afraid, insecure. We shout when we feel threatened. We strike when we feel exposed. We humiliate when we feel inferior. Aggression is a mask for the fear of vulnerability. This logic applies not just personally, but collectively. Nations that build the biggest armies are often the most fearful. The most dogmatic organizations are the most fragile. The strictest families often house the greatest anxiety. Those who control the most are the ones who fear the most. And in our personal relationships, the same mechanism is at work. We control those we love because we're afraid of losing them. We demand absolute loyalty because we fear being alone. We cling to our partner like a lifeboat and call it love. But De Mello warns, where there is fear, there cannot be love. The solution: awareness in the face of conditioning. What is the antidote to this endemic fear? Not forced courage, not fake confidence, but awareness. Fear disappears when you look at it directly. Fear survives only in the darkness of the mind. When you bring it into the light, when you fully feel it without running from it or justifying it, it begins to dissolve. You don't need to fight fear. You need to understand it, to feel it, to observe it, to say, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to be alone, to be rejected, to be unloved, to lose. And then stay there. Stay present. Don't run. Don't react. Don't create a story. Fear is not the problem. The problem is that you don't want to feel it. De Mello challenges us to understand that our fears are learned. No child is born afraid of failure, abandonment, or rejection. We learn these fears. We absorb them from our environment, through trauma, education, religion, and the culture of shame. Awareness becomes the only safe space where these fears can be revealed and released. In conclusion, Anthony de Mello shows us that fear is the subtle root of all violence, pain, and conflict. We don't need to conquer it. We need to recognize it. We don't need to suppress it. We need to feel it with clarity, because the moment we truly see it, it begins to lose its power over us. When you become aware of fear, instead of reacting from it, you begin to be free. True spirituality. How many of us believe we are spiritual simply because we're religious, or because we meditate, fast, or read sacred books? In this chapter, Anthony de Mello dismantles all the appearances in which we've hidden the idea of spirituality and reduces it, not to an essence, but to an absence. The absence of illusion, of ego, of control, of attachment. Spirituality is not about becoming something. It's about seeing what you are not and becoming free. It's a simple yet radical idea. Instead of adding practices, beliefs, or rituals, de Mello invites us to subtract, to cleanse, to unlearn, because true awakening is not about becoming better. It's about ceasing to be false, the difference between religion and awakening. Anthony de Mello draws a clear and often uncomfortable distinction between religion and living spirituality. Religion, in its institutionalized form, is often a set of rules, inherited dogmas, and traditions that do not in any way guarantee awakening. In fact, he says, religion can become one of the most refined ways of putting consciousness to sleep. Many people are religious. Very few are awake. Religion, in its conventional form, demands conformity. Spirituality demands clarity. Religion asks for belief. Spirituality asks for vision. Religion teaches you what is right. Spirituality invites you to see what is. God is not an idea. God is pure reality, lived in silence, here and now. This reality needs no churches, no rituals, no quotes. It is always present. But our minds are too busy, too conditioned, too attached to an image of an external God, too caught up in the search for meaning, to recognize the divine in the living present. Silence, humor, and presence as spiritual practices. Instead of solemnity, heaviness, or spiritual striving, Anthony de Mello proposes 3 unexpected gateways to awakening: silence, humor, and presence. Silence. Silence is the soil in which understanding grows. This isn't just outer silence, but the silence of the mind. Free of commentary, interpretation, and reaction. It is that empty space where you no longer want anything, run from anything, or try to achieve anything. In that silence, truth reveals itself. De Mello affirms that no authentic spiritual act can take place without this inner silence. You cannot hear the voice of God if all you hear is the noise of your desires. Humor. When you can laugh at yourself, you are almost awake. Here, de Mello breaks with rigid, overly solemn spiritual traditions. He says humor is a clear sign of awakened consciousness. Why? Because the ego cannot laugh at itself. Only awareness can. A wise person doesn't take themselves too seriously. They don't need to be venerated. They don't need to always be right. They can laugh at the madness of the world because they've seen, beyond it, the clarity of the divine. Presence. Life is not in the past, not in the future. It is here, now. And most people miss it. To be completely present in the current moment. without trying to change anything, without regret, without fear, just being. Paradoxically, this is the most difficult state for a mind addicted to restlessness, but it is also the only state in which true transformation can arise. Don't seek love. Destroy its obstacles. One of the most memorable passages in this chapter is where de Mello speaks about love and the absurdity of seeking it. You don't need to look for love, it's already there. All you need to do is destroy what prevents it from appearing. This is a radical reversal of the modern idea that we must find love, attract it, or cultivate it. No, love is our nature, but it's buried beneath layers of fear, conditioning, guilt, attachment, and control. De Mello says that love cannot be possessed. It cannot be learned. It cannot be created. It can only be revealed in the absence of ego. You don't need to love. You need to see what's stopping it from flowing through you. This idea applies not only to romantic love, but to all forms of human connection, empathy, and giving. When the ego disappears, love appears, not as an emotion, but as the natural state of the awakened being. In conclusion, true spirituality is not spectacular. It is not organized. It is not reserved for the initiated. It is simple, alive, hidden in the most humble acts of the present moment. True spirituality is silence, humor, and presence. When you stop trying to become spiritual, you've begun to be. Live awake, live real. Who am I without illusion, without story, without role? This is the final question. The question beyond all questions. It is silent, yet piercingly clear. Because everything we've explored, fear, attachment, conditioning, dependency, false love, melts down into this one point. Who remains when there is nothing left to defend? You are not your name. You are not your career. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your past. You are who? De Mello offers no answer, not because he doesn't know, but because truth cannot be told. It can only be lived. And the one who seeks a concrete answer isn't seeking freedom. He is seeking a more sophisticated identity. Awakening doesn't give you a new identity. It strips away all identities. And then, for the first time, you are alive. Who am I without illusion? We are so used to living through masks, through labels, through images, that the idea of being without identity terrifies us. We become someone's son, someone's wife, the therapist, the believer, the rebel, the savior, the victim, the dreamer. We cling to roles because we fear being nothing. But de Mello tells us that only in that nothing can true freedom be found. Nothing is more terrifying to the ego than not having a label. But nothing is more beautiful for the soul than playing no role at all. When you are no longer anything, you can be everything. You can be real. You can love without conditions. You can live without a goal. You can breathe without having to prove anything. You become what you are, consciousness itself, the space in which all things arise and fall without defining you. Life as a dance, not a mission. Life is not a project, it's not a duty, it's not a competition. It's a dance. This may be one of the most poetic and liberating images offered by de Mello. We've become accustomed to living life as a mission. We must become someone, find our purpose, fulfill our potential. Everything becomes work, striving, pursuit. But from this mindset, life turns heavy, burdensome, unforgiving. We get lost in anxiety and perfectionism. The question, am I doing the right thing, becomes obsessive. De Mello says, let go. Let go of the struggle to become. And start to live, start to dance. Only an awakened person can dance with life. The others try to control it, fear it, manipulate it, or run from it. Dance has no purpose. It is for the joy of movement. You don't have to get anywhere. You don't have to succeed. You only have to be present, free, alive. This is what it means to live truly. Without explanation, without comparison, without imposed objectives. A flow, A smile, a silence, a hug, a farewell, a pure sorrow, a quiet love, without why, without what for, just because you are here. Anthony de Mello's final message. Awakening is a constant surprise. You have no idea who you'll be in the next moment, but you're no longer afraid of that. You are free. The final message is not a formula, not a summary, not a conclusion. It is an open invitation, not to change anything, but to see, to live in direct contact with reality, without filters, without narratives, without pretense, to be in silence with what is. It's not an ending, but a simple new beginning, without effort, without ambition, without the urge to arrive anywhere, just here, just now. You've already been what you're looking for, you just didn't see it. Now you see, now you are awake. A life lived awake. You're no longer seeking, no longer running, no longer struggling. You are. That is the whole of spirituality. That is awakening. That is freedom. It's not spectacular. It's not something to talk about. It's not for sharing online. It is for living in silence, in love, in what is real. Who are you? What is the world? You will never know. And you no longer need to. There are books that give you ideas, others that offer you theories. Awareness gives you nothing. Instead, it takes from you. Illusion by illusion, mask by mask, layer by layer, until all that remains is what you've always been, but never knew. Living presence, free, quiet, nameless. This book doesn't teach you. It unteaches you. It doesn't give you answers. It takes away your questions. It doesn't promise you a better life. It simply reveals, with a gentle yet unforgiving light, the life that already is. But that you were too asleep, too rushed, too conditioned to see. And still, this is not a harsh book. It is a living, warm, quietly revolutionary book. In it, you will find no accusation, only a mirror. No moralism, but freedom. It doesn't tell you how to live. It reminds you that you already are alive, and that life doesn't need instruction manuals, only clarity. What is truly remarkable about Anthony de Mello's teachings is their universal simplicity. They do not belong to any religion, tradition, or philosophical school. They belong to the awakened human being, whoever that may be. In education, we are taught to accumulate. This book teaches us to empty, to unlearn models, expectations, and conditioning. And perhaps it is in education where awakening is needed most, because that's where the collective sleep of conformity begins. In psychology, we work with trauma, attachments, and behaviors. Awareness denies none of these, but it adds an essential layer. Inner freedom does not come only through healing. It comes through awareness, through the clarity to see that you are not the story of your pain. You are the space that observes it. In religion, we seek meaning, salvation, and truth. But de Mello reminds us, truth is not something to seek. It is something to see, and not in books, temples, or doctrines, but in the conscious silence of the present moment, a living spirituality, without labels, without fear, without promises, just life, lived with open eyes. But de Mello reminds us, truth is not something to seek. It is something to see, and not in books, temples, or doctrines, but in the conscious silence of the present moment. A living spirituality, without labels, without fear, without promises, just life, lived with open eyes. Why awakening is more necessary than ever. We live in a world where we are constantly connected, yet increasingly disconnected from ourselves. We have apps that track our sleep, but lack the courage to admit we are asleep in life. We live by reflex, through emotional exhaustion, through attachments, through fear, through the constant urge to be something other than what we are. In this context, awareness is not just a book, it is an inner alarm. A gentle yet piercing wake up, spoken with the kindness of a friend and the clarity of a lighthouse. Not to help you become better, but to help you stop sleeping. Awakening is necessary because without it, We mistake love for dependency, spirituality for fear, life for survival, and stillness for resignation. Awakening is necessary because without it, all our knowledge becomes nothing more than a sophisticated form of blindness. This book doesn't change what you do, but it can change how you live each moment. After listening all this, something breaks. But not in the sense of loss, in the sense of liberation. You can no longer confuse pain with guilt. You can no longer love out of fear. You can no longer ask others to fix you. You can no longer live in projections without seeing them. You become a witness. And in that witnessing, real transformation begins. Quiet, unforced, profound. You become gentler, clearer, more attentive, not because you are trying, but because you're no longer carrying the weight of unconsciousness. Your relationships become freer. You no longer need to convince, to save, to hold on. You can love without needing. You can leave without hating. You can lose without falling. This is real freedom, not a spectacular one, but a quiet, unwavering kind. If, while listening to this summary, you felt that some passages seemed written just for you, know that you are not alone. There are many of us, people who question, who feel lost, who want to love but are afraid, who seek authenticity yet still hide, who long for peace but are trapped in noise. We are many. And though we walk the path of awakening alone, we are together in the same thirst for truth. We are united by this curiosity of the heart, this exhaustion from playing roles, this quiet longing to finally live for real. Maybe we don't know exactly what awakening is, but we all know how it feels, like a release, like clarity, like a smile without a reason. So, breathe, look, don't rush. Awakening is not a destination. It is every moment in which you no longer forget who you truly are. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to see who you are not. You don't need to control your life. You only need to be present. You don't need to seek love. You only need to destroy what blocks it. You don't need to fight suffering. You only need to understand its source. Illusion. You don't need to add anything. You only need to let go of everything that's false. Thank you for listening to the full audio summary of Awareness by Anthony de Mello. If you've made it this far, it means that somehow, something in this message has spoken to you. Maybe a sentence, maybe a feeling, maybe just a different kind of stillness inside you. Whatever it is, don't keep it to yourself. Tell us. Tell me. Leave a comment below. It doesn't need to be long or complex. It can be just one word, a thought, a reaction, a gesture of presence. You could write, "Awake. It touched me. I feel. Freedom. I understand. I want more. I'm here." Or anything you feel in your own way. You are welcome here. Every word matters. Tell us, what moved you the most? What did you see in yourself while listening to this summary? If you feel this message might help someone you care about, please share it. You never know what kind of transformation a simple play might bring. And if you'd like to be part of our audio journey toward awareness, hit the subscribe button. It costs nothing, but it gives a lot. A like helps us carry this work forward. A share makes it visible to someone who might really need it today. And if you feel gratitude, express it. Not for us, but for yourself. For the part of your soul that somehow just woke up a little. In the Educast global community, you are never alone. We are many, different, but united by the same desire to live consciously, awake, and real. I'll see you in the comments. I'll read you. I'll feel you. And I thank you. With open hearts and a voice awakened by truth, the Educast Global team.